The air in New Avalon was thick with salt and spun sugar. Fireworks, bright bursts of emerald and sapphire, shattered the summer night over the gilded pier. They painted the dark water of the bay in fleeting light. Below, the summer fair pulsed with life, a cacophony of calliope music and the high-pitched laughter of children. Cassian Vale felt the vibrations through the soles of his handmade Italian shoes. He stood on the marble steps of the Oceana Ballroom, having just left a charity gala where his presence alone had secured 7 figures in donations to the city. He was the billionaire proprietor of Vale Harbor Works, the sprawling empire of shipping and casinos that owned the skyline. To the shadows, he was the Don, a man whose control was absolute. He loosened his black tie, his gaze sweeping the crowd, cold and assessing. Further down the boardwalk, Maya Hart navigated the throng, holding tightly to a small hand. Her shift at the ER had ended an hour ago, leaving her smelling faintly of antiseptic and exhaustion. "Mommy, look." Juniper Hart, known only as Juno, pointed up. She was 7 years old, a whirlwind of energy capped by dark curls, her wrist encircled by a cheap, glowing green bracelet. She was reaching for a cloud of pink cotton candy when the sound changed. It was not the crackle of fireworks. It was the roar of an engine pushed past its limit, the squeal of tires protesting on brick. A black pickup truck, windows tinted to oblivion, mounted the curb, its grille aimed directly at the steps of the ballroom. It was a hit and run, designed for maximum chaos. Cassian's security detail moved instantly, shouting, "Sir, move!" But Cassian had already seen it, not just the truck, but the small figure in the direct path of the ricochet, Juno Hart, frozen. Her cotton candy dropped, her eyes wide as the truck barreled toward the bottleneck where Cassian stood. Cassian did not think. He moved. He broke containment, shoving past his own men, a violation of every protocol he lived by. He covered the 20 feet in 3 bounds. His tuxedo jacket flaring, he grabbed the small, warm body of the child, tucking her against his chest, shielding her with his own back. "Down," he commanded, though she was already paralyzed. He used his momentum, twisting as the truck slammed into the concrete balustrade he had just vacated. He and the girl rolled, scraping into the narrow alley between the ballroom and a souvenir shop. The truck's side mirror clipped the building, and the shop's front window exploded. A rain of glass, sharp and glittering like the fireworks above, showered down onto the pavement where they lay. Silas Rook, Cassian's second-in-command, was already moving, his weapon drawn, pursuing the truck as it sped away into the night. But Silas knew a lost cause. The driver was a ghost. Back in the alley, Cassian pushed himself up on one elbow, his body aching from the impact. Juno was pinned beneath him, whimpering but unharmed. Then, a scream. "Get away from my daughter!" Maya Hart scrambled toward them, her face pale with terror, assuming the worst, assuming an abduction. Cassian rose, pulling Juno up gently. He handed the child back to her mother, his movements stiff. His voice was flat, devoid of emotion, a cold piece of steel. The target was me. Maya froze, clutching Juno, looking from the wrecked balustrade to the impassive, dangerously handsome face of the man in the ruined suit. Their eyes locked, a collision of 2 worlds, hers of saving lives, his of taking them. Blue and red lights began to strobe, cutting through the smoke and colored lights of the fair. The PSB, the Public Safety Bureau, was arriving. Maya's tremors stopped, her training kicking in. She knelt, her hands running over Juno, checking pupils, feeling for breaks. "Juno, baby, look at me. Follow my finger." There was a small cut on Juno's temple, bleeding sluggishly. "She needs a workup," Maya said, her voice clinical. "She has a rare blood type, AB negative, with specific antibodies. We need to check for internal bleeding." "She won't be going to City General," Cassian stated. It was not a request. He signaled to his own armored sedan, gliding silently to the curb. "She'll go to Vale Memorial." I'm not going anywhere with you, Maya shot back, scooping Juno up. Cassian's gaze hardened. The ambulance system is choked, Silas Rook said, reappearing at his shoulder, phone to his ear. PSB confirms a 3-car pileup on the Heliotrope Bridge. 40-minute wait, minimum. Maya looked at the blood on her fingers, then at the chaos of the flashing lights. She was trapped. She gave a sharp, angry nod, climbing into the back of the black car. The sedan moved with unnerving silence. Cutting through the traffic barriers, the PSB parted for Cassian Vale. Juno, wrapped in Cassian's discarded suit jacket, had stopped crying. She looked at the man sitting opposite them. "Mister," she whispered, "are the fireworks scared of the thunder?" Cassian stared. He was processing the attack, the breach in his security, the identity of his enemy. The question was so absurd, so innocent, it bypassed his defenses. A short, rough laugh escaped him. "No," he said. "I think they like the noise." Juno smiled, and Cassian felt a sudden, strange jolt. Her eyes, they were a specific shade of hazel green, a shade he knew intimately. He saw them every morning in the mirror. Before he could process the thought, his private phone vibrated, a secured message. No sender, just 5 words. Your heartbeat just skipped. Cassian understood. This was not a failed attempt. It was a warning shot. They had aimed near the child on purpose. They were showing him what they could touch. Ilya Novak. It had to be. The rival Don had crossed a line Cassian himself had drawn in blood years ago. No children. The car pulled into the private entrance of Vale Memorial. Cassian looked at Juno, who had fallen asleep against her mother's chest, her small face peaceful. The flashing lights of the city washed over her, and he saw the dying embers of the fireworks reflected in the dark car window, overlaid on her sleeping form. For the first time in a decade, the ice around Cassian Vale's heart felt something other than cold. It felt a crack. The pediatric wing of Vale Memorial was a different world from the chaos of the pier. It was silent, sterile, and bathed in the soft, artificial light of 3 in the morning. Juno was sleeping, stabilized in a private room, but a doctor, a man with tired eyes named Aris, met Maya and Cassian in the hallway. "Miss Hart, your daughter's preliminary scans are clear of fractures." "Doctor," Aris began, his voice low, "but the blood work from her intake is unusual. She's AB negative, which you already knew. That is rare, perhaps 1% of the population. However, she also carries a highly specific antibody profile. It makes her a universal plasma donor, but an extremely difficult recipient for whole blood." Maya's own medical training kicked in, pushing past the maternal fear. Difficult how? If she develops complications from the internal bruising, any hemorrhaging, she will require a precisely compatible donor. We are running searches on the National Registry, but frankly, it is a needle in a haystack. Maya felt the floor drop. Her own blood, O positive, was useless for this. Cassian, who had been listening silently, turned to the doctor, stepping just out of Maya's earshot. "Test me," he said. It was not a question. "Doctor," Aris blinked. "Mr. Vale, the odds of a random match are astronomical. It is not worth the—" "Test me," Cassian repeated, his voice flat, leaving no room for argument. An hour later, "Doctor." Aris found Cassian standing by the nurse's station, staring at the telemetry screens. The doctor was holding a tablet, his expression baffled. "Mr. Vale," he said, keeping his voice down, "I do not know how this is possible. It is a perfect match, not just compatible. It is a 1 in a million, marker for marker perfect match. I have never seen a non-relative match this closely." Cassian absorbed the information, his face an impassive mask. This strange, impossible fact settled inside him. Another piece of a puzzle he did not understand. "Keep this confidential," Cassian ordered. "Only essential medical staff." He returned to the small, private waiting room attached to Juno's suite. Maya was standing by the window, her arms crossed, watching the city lights. "Why are you still here?" she asked, her voice tight. You delivered us to your private hospital. Your duty is done." Cassian turned slowly from the door. "She's not yet cleared to leave." "I do not understand you," Maya said, her frustration bubbling over. "The entire city whispers that you are a monster who owns the docks, but you run into gunfire for a child you do not know. You bring us here." She gestured to the expensive room. "Why?" Cassian met her gaze. His eyes were cold, but there was something else beneath the surface. "I hate people who shoot into crowds." Maya searched his face for the deception she expected, but found only the stark, simple truth. It was too simple, and yet she believed him. Neither of them mentioned the blood test. He did not offer the information, and she did not know to ask. Across town, in the steel and glass penthouse that served as his command center, Vera Calder, Cassian's lawyer and chief strategist, stood before a wall of glowing monitors. "The truck," she said, pointing to a grainy, enhanced image. "A reinforced 2024 model. It exited the Gilded Pier and vanished near the rail yards." "We lost it," Silas Rook confirmed, his face tight with anger at the failure. "But the plates were not stolen. They were cloned from a legitimate fleet," Vera continued. She hit a key, and a corporate logo filled the screen. Novak Logistics, Ilya Novak's primary front for his underground railroad operations. Cassian, who had just arrived, spoke from the shadows. "Novak, he is moving off the tracks." "It gets worse," Vera said, turning to him. "I received a whisper from my contact at the IFIO, the Interstate Financial Integrity Office. They just opened a priority probe into money laundering. They believe there is a leak, an insider, funneling cash and vital information from Vale Harbor Works to an outside party." Cassian connected the dots instantly. The gala, his exact route, the timing. Novak knew my location. It was not a random hit. "A mole," Silas spat. "A mole in port security," Cassian concluded, his voice dropping to a dangerous calm. "Someone sold me to Novak." He looked at the massive, real-time map of his shipping operations. "Vera, lock it down. Shut the gates. No container moves in or out of New Avalon. I do not care if it costs us $10 million a day. We are going to starve the rat out." Back at the hospital, Maya stepped out of Juno's room, desperate for coffee. She found Cassian, not in the plush VIP lounge, but in the main pediatric waiting room. He was sitting in a small, brightly colored plastic chair, staring at a wall painted with cartoon whales. He looked utterly out of place, a precision weapon in a nursery. She hesitated, then spoke. "You did not have to stay." He did not look up, his gaze fixed on a poorly painted dolphin. "He knew I would be there. He knew there would be crowds, families." His voice was rough, scraped raw. "When I was a kid, in Breakwater, I saw a bodega owner's son catch a stray bullet over a turf war. He was 9. He finally turned his head, his dark eyes meeting hers. "I made a vow then. My business is my business. But children are never part of the equation. They are never acceptable collateral." Maya saw it then, the profound exhaustion beneath the iron control. The mask of the dawn slipped, just for a second, revealing something deeply human and wounded. Her hostility began to melt, replaced by a confusing, unwelcome sympathy. She returned to Juno's room, sinking into the recliner. Her phone vibrated. A restricted number. She frowned, opening the message. "Don't trust Vale. She's not safe near him. Maya's breath hitched. She was about to delete it as a sick prank when a second message came through. It was an attachment, an image. She opened it, and her stomach turned to ice. It was her. Standing outside the old city clinic on 7th Street, she was visibly pregnant, maybe 6 or 7 months along, her hand resting on her stomach. It was 6 years ago. The angle was from across the street, zoomed in, the perspective of a stalker. Who had been watching her? For how long? The message implied Vale was the threat. But this felt different. This felt older. She quickly hid the phone as a nurse entered to check Juno's vitals, the seed of a terrible, cold doubt planting itself in her heart. Dawn was breaking. painting the sky over New Avalon in shades of bruised purple and gray. Cassian stood on the private helipad of the hospital, the wind whipping his unbuttoned suit jacket. His secure phone rang. This time, it was not a text. It was a voice call, heavily scrambled. He answered. Ilya Novak's voice, thick with an Eastern European accent and digital static, filled his ear. I hear you are a generous man. Vale, a blood donor. Cassian's hand tightened on the phone. He knows. The hospital network. His hospital was compromised. Blood trade or life trade, Novak sneered. You choose. Ashford Junction, 1 hour. The line cut. Cassian looked at the rising sun. The truce was over. The war had just been declared. Juno was awake when Maya returned. The morning light, filtered through the hospital's tinted windows, was kind. But Maya stopped in the doorway, her breath catching. Cassian Vale was sitting on the edge of the child's bed, a bowl of porridge in his hand. He was feeding Juno, one small spoonful at a time, and he was speaking in a low, mesmerizing voice. And so the old tugboat, Hercules. He told the giant container ship that he was not allowed in the harbor. Cassian was saying. Juno, forgetting her discomfort, was listening intently. Because even if you are the biggest, you still have to respect the rules of the water. Juno giggled, taking the spoon. Is Hercules the boss? He is the one who keeps the others safe, Cassian replied, his lips curving in a smile that did not quite reach his eyes. That is more important than being the boss. Maya had seen this man command a hospital, move like a panther, and carry the weight of a criminal empire. Now, she was watching him discuss the ethics of tugboats with a 7-year-old. The disconnect was jarring, a dangerous crack in the armor she had built against him. Later, while Juno napped, the truce between them fractured. Maya found him by the window, a cup of black coffee in his hand, staring down at the city he owned. You cannot fix this, you know, she said, her voice sharp. You cannot just buy safety. He turned slowly. I'm not buying it. I'm building it. When the world is made of predators, you do not need clean hands. You need a higher wall. That is the justification, she shot back, stepping closer. That is what men like you tell yourselves. I work in the ER. I see what your walls do. I spend my nights putting people back together. She held up her own hands, palms out. I save lives. My hands are clean. His gaze dropped to her hands, then lifted back to her face, hard and unyielding. Clean hands cannot stop a bullet that is already in the air. Mine can. The argument hung in the air, vibrating with unspoken truths. He was right, and she hated him for it. He took a drink of his coffee, his knuckles white. She saw it then, a pale, jagged scar that ran from his first knuckle to his wrist. Before she could stop herself, she reached out, her fingers brushing the raised line of healed tissue. Cassian flinched. It was not a small movement, but a violent, systemic recoil, as if struck by electricity. He pulled his hand back, steadying himself. The cup in his other hand did not rattle. I'm sorry, Maya whispered, mortified. He looked at the scar, flexing his fingers. A long breath left him. Breakwater, he said, the single word explaining everything. The roughest, poorest fishing slum in New Avalon. You grow up there. You learn fast. You learn that the only thing that protects what is yours is the reputation that you are more dangerous than anyone who tries to take it. He had bared a piece of himself, and the intimacy of the admission left Maya unsteady. The sterile quiet of the hospital room suddenly felt charged, the air thinning. She was aware of his proximity, the scent of the dark coffee, the clean, sharp smell of his pressed shirt. He was looking at her, his gaze intense, assessing, and for the first time, she saw something other than a dawn or a guardian. She saw a man. The tension stretched, pulling taut like a wire. Her breath hitched. Cassian broke the gaze first, his jaw tightening. He set the cup down with a decisive click. You cannot go back to your apartment, he said. his voice once again flat and controlled. "Novak's men have been watching you. The photo of you, pregnant. This is not new." Maya's blood ran cold at the memory of the text message. "I have a place, the Cobalt. It is the most secure residential building in the city. No one gets in without my authorization. I am moving you and Juno there, today." The offer of sanctuary felt like a cage. "No," she said, her voice shaking but firm. "I am not your property. Mr. Vale, I am not going to be your prisoner just because you are at war with someone." "This is not a request. Maya, it is for Juno. He sent me a message. He knows about the blood match. He knows she is in this hospital." She was about to argue, to fight, to run, when her phone vibrated on the table. Another blocked number. Her hand trembled as she picked it up. It was a photograph. Juno, 3 days ago, standing outside her elementary school, holding her bright blue backpack, laughing at another child. The photo was time-stamped. Underneath it, one word goalpost. A small, strangled sound escaped her. They knew her routes, her daily life. They had been tracking her daughter. This was not about Cassian anymore. This was about her. She looked up at Cassian, her face drained of all color. He saw the shift, the terror that had replaced her defiance. He understood. He did not crowd her, did not touch her. Instead, he placed his hand on the table beside hers, palm up, a gesture of offering, not of force. "I will build a perimeter around you both," he vowed, his voice a low, resonant promise. "I will be the wall. Nothing gets through." Maya looked at his scarred hand, the hand of a fighter, now open and steady. She closed her eyes for a second, then gave a single, terrified nod. Vera Calder's voice was sharp over Cassian's secure line. "The Cobalt is a clean asset. Cassian, it is legally firewalled from the harbor works. You move a civilian witness, a witness in a potential IFIO case, into that apartment, and you expose us. It is a massive legal liability." "She is not a witness. Vera, she is a target," Cassian said, watching as Maya packed a small bag for Juno. "It is on me." He ended the call. Leaving the hospital was an operation. They bypassed the main floors, taking a secure service elevator to a subterranean garage. Silas was behind the wheel of the armored sedan, the engine already humming. Maya sat in the back, Juno buckled securely beside her, Cassian on her other side. They were 2 blocks away when the satellite navigation on the dashboard flickered and went dark. "Jamming," Silas said, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. A high-pitched, electronic whine filled the air. Cassian looked up through the sunroof. Drones. 2 small, black drones zipped overhead, locking onto their vehicle. "They are not armed," Cassian said, his voice calm. "They are broadcasting our position. Silas, lose them." Silas wrenched the wheel, swinging the heavy sedan into an oncoming lane, then cutting hard into an alleyway too narrow for pursuit. The car scraped a brick wall, sending sparks flying. Maya gasped, instinctively throwing her body over Juno, shielding her. "It is okay, baby," she whispered, her heart hammering. "We are playing a game. Breathe with me. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 4. Cassian braced his arm against the window frame, his body acting as a shield for them both. He watched Maya, her voice never wavering as she calmed her child while the world outside erupted in chaos. Silas burst from the alley onto a main thoroughfare, diving into the mouth of the old industrial aqueduct tunnel. The signal cut instantly. The drones were lost. They emerged minutes later in a different district, pulling into the silent, unmarked garage of a tower that seemed to be made entirely of black glass and sky. The Cobalt, a private elevator opened directly into the penthouse. The first thing Maya noticed was the view. An entire wall of floor-to-ceiling glass revealed the whole of New Avalon, the bay glittering like a carpet of diamonds. It was the most beautiful room she had ever seen, and the most secure prison. Freedom was right there, just across the water, a brightly lit skyline that was now impossibly out of reach. Maya tucked Juno into the bed of a guest room that was larger than her entire apartment. When she walked back into the main living area, Cassian was on the sofa. His jacket was off. His tie was gone. His handgun was on the coffee table, disassembled on a small cloth. He was methodically cleaning the pieces. He did not tell her he was staying. He did not have to. He was the wall. He nodded to her, his eyes heavy with exhaustion but alert. He leaned his head against the back of the sofa, his gaze fixed on the apartment's entrance. The dawn, standing guard in the silent, empty night, was an image that burned itself into her mind. The penthouse at the Cobalt was silent, but it was the humming silence of immense technology. Vera Calder's face was a high-definition projection on a black glass wall, her expression grim. She was presenting to Cassian, who sat at the head of a long, dark table, while Maya hovered near the kitchen, an unwilling audience. The money trail from the pier was a dead end, or Vera said, her voice crisp. But the funds paid to the hospital mole who accessed Juno's medical files. That was sloppy. We traced the crypto wallet. A complex diagram appeared on the wall. It originates from a shell foundation, a charity called Harbor Hearts. Maya, who had been pouring a glass of water, let the glass slip from her fingers. It did not break, but clattered loudly in the stainless steel sink. Cassian turned to her, his gaze sharp. "What is it?" "Harbor Heart," Maya repeated, her voice thin. She was breathing quickly. "When I was pregnant with Juno, I was still in nursing school. I had no insurance. I went to a community health program at a clinic on 7th Street, the primary sponsor." She swallowed, the memory sickening. The sign was on the wall, Harbor Heart's Community Fund. Cassian looked back at Vera's projection, his face darkening. "I fund at least a dozen community health initiatives in the port districts. Vera, but I have never heard of that one." "Because it is not yours." "Cassian," Vera said, "it is a phantom, designed to look like you. Novak has been running a data mining operation under your banner for years, buying medical records from underfunded clinics. He was not just looking for leverage, he was looking for vulnerabilities. He knew about Juno's blood type long before the accident." The implication was horrifying. Novak had been collecting data, and the picture of a pregnant Maya proved he had been watching them for years, waiting for the right moment to use his asset. The tension in the apartment became thick and suffocating. Later that afternoon, Maya sat on the plush sofa, trying to read a magazine, but the words blurred. Juno, oblivious to the adult fears, was sitting on the thick rug, a box of new crayons spread around her. She was drawing. "Mommy, look," Juno announced, holding up her paper. "It is the beach. We went there last summer." Maya forced a smile. The drawing showed a yellow sun, blue water, and 2 stick figures. "That is lovely. Juno, who is that with you?" "That is the nice man," Juno said matter-of-factly. Maya frowned. "What nice man? Baby from the beach?" "No, silly. The man from the park. He has the shiny watch," Juno explained, as if it were obvious. "He says hello sometimes when we get ice cream. He told me he keeps the seagulls from stealing my snack." A chill, entirely separate from the penthouse's air conditioning, ran down Maya's spine. She took the drawing from Juno. The second stick figure was taller, and on its wrist, Juno had drawn a large, prominent square with silver crayon, a square watch. "It is very shiny," Juno confirmed. Maya stood up, holding the drawing. "Cassian." He emerged from the study, having just finished a call. He saw the drawing, then looked at Maya's pale face. He took the paper from her, his gaze locking onto the silver square. He did not speak to Maya. He pulled out his phone and dialed Silas. Juno's school, the park nearby, the ice cream shop on the corner. Pull every frame of security footage for the last 6 months. I want a man. Steel watch, square face. Find him. Cassian clicked off the phone and looked at Maya. The shared glance was one of cold, mutual terror. This was not just a mafia war. It was an infestation. The wait was agonizing. To busy himself, to burn off the rage that was rolling off him in waves. Cassian invaded the penthouse's pristine kitchen. Maya found him there an hour later, standing over the stove, stirring a large pot. He had his sleeves rolled up, revealing the strong, scarred forearms she had seen before. The air was filled with the smell of thyme, bacon, and the sea. "I did not take you for a chef," she said quietly, leaning against the doorframe. He did not look up from the pot. "Breakwater clam chowder. It is the only thing I know how to make. My grandfather said you could survive a winter, a war, or a broken heart with a good pot of chowder." He ladled the soup into 3 bowls. It was thick, creamy, and far from elegant. It was food made of necessity, not for show. They sat at the kitchen island, the high-tech fortress momentarily transformed into a family kitchen. Juno, delighted, ate eagerly. "This is way better than the red can soup, mister," Juno declared. Cassian almost smiled. "That is because the secret ingredient is anger." Maya looked at him, surprised. "And," he added, his voice dropping, "an obscene amount of butter." A sound startled them both, a short, bright laugh. It came from Maya. It was the first time he had heard her laugh, and the genuine, unguarded sound hit him harder than the truck on the pier. Their eyes met, and the charged atmosphere from the hospital returned, but this time it was softer, warmed by the steam from the soup. That night, Maya woke thirsty. She walked into the darkened hallway. The 2 men from Cassian's private detail, the ones he called his seagulls, were stationed outside Juno's bedroom door. She saw Cassian approach them from the living room. "Go," he said, his voice a low command. "Take the perimeter. I want eyes on the elevator and the service stairs." "Sir, our post is the principal." One of the guards, Silas's best, protested. "The protocol is what I say it is," Cassian countered, his voice like iron. "I have the interior." The guards shared a look, then nodded, moving silently toward the apartment's main entrance. Cassian did not return to the sofa. He leaned his back against the wall directly opposite Juno's door, crossing his arms over his chest. He was standing sentry himself. Maya watched him from the shadows. He was the city's predator, the dawn of the harbor, and he was standing watch over a 7-year-old's dreams, his body an unmoving shield. Her resolve to keep him at arm's length began to crumble. The good news came just before dawn. Cassian's phone vibrated with a text from Vera. "The bait is in the trap." He met Maya in the kitchen, where the coffee was already brewing. "Vera ran the trap," he said. "We used my offer of Novak's laundering data as bait for Deputy Chief Harris at the PSB. We told him the only man who could decrypt the files was the mole. Harris put the word out." And Maya asked. "And the man with the square-faced watch showed up to claim the prize," Cassian finished. "His name is Bram Kincaid, a decorated ex-PSB investigator, fired 2 years ago for evidence tampering. He has been on Novak's payroll ever since. He was the one watching Juno. He's the mole who sold my position at the pier." A wave of relief washed over Maya. "It is over. You have him." Cassian looked at the phone in his hand, his expression still dark. "We have the mole, but we do not have the snake." As if summoned, the phone rang. It was Vera, calling him directly. "Cassian," her voice was sharp. "All business. The good news is over. The IFIO just made their move. They are not waiting for our intel. They just launched Operation Clearwater." Clearwater. They are not treating this as an internal matter anymore. They are painting it as a full-scale war for control of the harbor. And they are classifying both you and Novak as equal threats. They are sweeping everyone. Vale Harbor Works is officially target number 1. The legal storm just made landfall. The fragile piece of the cobalt shattered just before noon. Operation Clearwater was a storm raging outside, but the new threat came from within. Juno, who'd been sleeping restlessly, woke with a low-grade fever. Within an hour, she was listless. Maya, her nurse's training overriding her maternal panic, checked her vitals, a rapid, thready pulse. Her skin was clammy. Maya gently lifted Juno's pajama shirt. The deep bruising on her torso, which had been fading, was now spreading, a dark, angry purple bloom under the skin. "Cassian," her voice was sharp, sterile. "She is crashing. It is a delayed immune reaction to the trauma. She is hemorrhaging internally. We have to go back. Now." There was no discussion. Cashin had them in the armored car and pulling into the Vale Memorial Trauma Bay in under 10 minutes. "Doctor." Eris met them at the entrance, his face already grim. "We were afraid of this," he said, as nurses rushed Juno to stabilization. The impact, combined with her specific antibodies, her system is attacking itself. She needs a full transfusion immediately. "Then do it," Maya commanded, her hands shaking. "Well, we cannot," Aris said, stopping her. "The blood bank is dry. We have exactly 1 unit of AB negative in the city, and it is not compatible with her antibody profile. We are running the national registry, but—" "You do not need the registry," Cassian said, walking past them both. He pushed through the doors of the procedural suite, startling the staff. "I am the donor. I was tested last night. I am the match." Maya swayed, grabbing the doorframe for support. "Doctor." Aris looked at her, his expression one of complete disbelief. "Miss Hart, I informed Mr. Vale last night the compatibility. It is beyond rare. It is like lightning striking the same spot twice. It is a 1 in a million medical impossibility." Cassian was already on the gurney, rolling up the sleeve of his dark shirt. The procedure room was cold, lit by harsh, white fluorescent lights. Maya, her own training moving her feet, walked in. A nurse was prepping the IV bag, but Maya took the tray. This was her daughter. This was her job. "I will do it," she said, her voice barely a whisper. She ripped open an alcohol swab, the antiseptic smell cutting the air. Cassian sat perfectly still, his arm offered, his gaze fixed on her face. Maya's hand trembled. She could intubate a dying man in a moving ambulance, but now she could not hold a needle steady. "Maya!" His voice was low, rough. She stopped. He covered her trembling hand with his free one. His was solid, warm, and impossibly steady. He looked directly into her eyes, and the armor of the dawn evaporated, leaving only the man who had stood guard at her daughter's door. "If I could give her my whole heart, I would." Her breath hitched. The raw, desperate sincerity of the confession broke through her fear. She nodded, her professional calm settling over her like a mantle. She tied the tourniquet with a sharp tug. Her fingers found the vein, and with a practiced, perfect motion, she set the line. Dark red, life-giving blood, his blood, began to flow, traveling down the clear tube toward the small body in the next room. An hour later, it was over. Juno's vitals had stabilized almost immediately. The color was returning to her cheeks. She was sleeping, this time in a deep, healing rest. Maya found Cassian in the sterile hallway, a small white bandage taped to the inside of his elbow. The adrenaline had faded, leaving her knees weak with a gratitude that was terrifying in its intensity. Tears she had refused to shed now streamed silently down her face. "I'm sorry," she whispered, her voice breaking. He frowned, turning to her. "For what?" "For all of it. I thought you were the danger. I thought you were the monster they all said you were. And you just—" She gestured, unable to find the words. "You just saved her life." He did not dismiss her apology. He did not say it was okay. He simply lifted his hand, the one that was not bandaged, and brushed his thumb gently across the back of hers. It was a restrained, comforting touch, a gesture of profound, unspoken intimacy. The moment of peace shattered. The sound of the main elevator doors opening was followed by loud, authoritative voices. "IFIO federal agents!" A group of men and women in dark blue windbreakers, IFIO emblazoned in yellow on their backs, stormed into the wing. They were not aiming weapons. They were holding federal warrants. "This wing is under a financial seizure order," the lead agent announced. Vera Calder appeared as if from thin air, intercepting the lead agent before he could take 2 steps. "Agent Miles, your warrant is overly broad and factually flawed," she said, her voice like ice. "You are in a critical care pediatric wing. You are interfering with patient care, and I will have your badge for this. You will not go near that child's room. She was a legal shield, buying them time. Maya looked at the federal agents, then at Cassian. Operation Clearwater. This was his world colliding with hers. Cassian, this is because of you, she pleaded, pulling on his arm. They are here for you. You have to go. You are putting her in more danger just by being here. He looked at the agents, his face hardening into an expression of cold resolve. No. He ignored her, walking past the agents who were arguing with Vera. He went straight to the nurse's station, where Dr. Eris stood watching, aghast. Cassian picked up a digital tablet. I need the medical sponsorship and guardianship forms, Cassian announced, his voice carrying clearly across the ward, deliberately loud enough for the IFIO agents to hear. I am signing as her medical guardian and sponsor. All billing and all decisions are deferred to me. He was not running. He was planting a flag, using his public billionaire identity as a shield for them, creating a legal, civilian tie that Vera could defend in court. As he was signing, his secure phone vibrated. He stepped aside, his back to the chaos. It was Silas. Boss. Silas's voice was low, urgent. We intercepted a scrambled communication on Novak's network. He's furious. He knows Kincaid is exposed and that the hit on the pier failed. He has activated a Black Wing contract. A Black Wing was a kill order, immediate and non-negotiable. On who? Cassian asked, his voice deadly calm. Not on you, boss. He's changing tactics. He wants to break your spirit, not just your body. The contract is on Maya. Cassian's hand tightened on the phone until his knuckles went white. He clicked off the call. He turned to Maya, his eyes dark with a primal fury she had never seen. Vera will handle them, he said, nodding to the feds. We are leaving. Now. He took her arm, pulling her toward the secure service elevator. Silas, the iron rule is in effect. Sir, Silas asked, already moving to flank them. The iron rule, Cassian repeated. No one touches them. He drove them back to the Cobalt himself, not trusting anyone else. He took a long, looping, circuitous route, watching every mirror, clearing every tail, his focus absolute. They finally reached the private garage. They rode the private elevator up in suffocating silence. Juno was asleep in Maya's arms. The doors slid shut, encasing them in the small, mirrored box. The only sound was the hum of the hydraulics. Maya looked at him. He was staring at the numbers as they climbed, but his jaw was clenched, his body radiating a protective rage. She looked at the white bandage on the inside of his elbow. Her hand lifted, as if of its own accord. Her fingers, trembling slightly, gently traced the edge of the gauze. You saved her, Maya whispered, her voice thick. You gave your own blood and you saved her life. Cassian turned his head, his gaze dropping to her hand, then rising to her eyes. The air in the elevator was too thin, charged with adrenaline, gratitude, and a dangerous, unspoken current. He lifted his own hand, not touching the bandage, but cupping her cheek, his thumb brushing away a tear she had not realized had fallen. He leaned in slowly, the space between them evaporating. He was so close she could feel the heat radiating from his skin. His gaze dropped to her lips, then back to her eyes. He lowered his head, his forehead coming to rest against hers. He breathed in, a shaky, unsteady breath, as if her presence was the first clean air he had taken in days. She closed her eyes, her hands clinging to the front of his shirt. Ding! The elevator doors slid open, revealing the bright, sunlit safety of the penthouse. The spell shattered. Cassian pulled back instantly, straightening up, his hand dropping from her face. He put a foot of distance between them. Maya stepped back, pulling her hand away as if she had touched a flame. They walked out of the elevator, the emotion raw and unnamed, suspended in the silent air between them. The storm broke over New Avalon just after midnight. It was a violent coastal deluge, with winds that howled against the black glass of the Cobalt. The power, fed by the city's strained grid, flickered once, twice, and then died. The penthouse was plunged into absolute darkness, the city skyline vanishing. A moment later, the building's private emergency system kicked in. It was not the harsh white light of a hospital, but a series of low, battery-powered sconces that cast a warm, golden glow, turning the high-tech fortress into something intimate, almost ancient. Juno was asleep in her room, oblivious, the steady beep of her portable medical monitor the only sound besides the rain. Maya sat in the living room, wrapped in a cashmere blanket she had found, watching the lightning fork over the bay. She felt like the last person on Earth. She heard a sound and tensed, but it was only Cassian. He emerged from his study, carrying 2 thick, unlit candles in heavy glass holders. He placed them on the coffee table, lighting them with a simple match, the flare of it illuminating his face. "The backup generator is for the security systems and the elevators," he said, his voice quiet in the suddenly small room. "The rest is non-essential." He looked at her, huddled in the blanket. He walked to a closet and pulled out a heavy, dark blue wool coat, his own. He did not ask. He simply draped it over her shoulders. It was heavy, and it smelled of him cedar, ozone, and something metallic. His fingers brushed the side of her neck as he settled the coat, a brief, warm touch that sent a shiver through her. "Thank you," she whispered. He sat, not close, but not far, in the armchair opposite her. The candlelight softened the hard lines of his face, making him look younger, more like the man from Breakwater. "I cannot do this, Cassian," Maya said, the confession torn from her. "I cannot live like this, and I will not let Juno live like this." He watched her, his expression unreadable. "I do not want her to grow up checking over her shoulder," Maya continued, her voice thick with tears she refused to shed. "I do not want her to know what a safe house is. I do not want her looking at the world the way you do, like it is a collection of threats to be managed. That is not a life." He was silent for a long time, listening to the wind and rain beat against the glass. "I am not trying to manage the threats anymore, that," he said finally, his voice a low rumble. "I'm trying to end them. Novak gets his power from the inland routes, the railways, the trucking, the dirty cargo that he funnels to the coast. My business, my father's business, was always the harbor, the sea." He leaned forward, the candlelight carving shadows under his cheekbones. "For the last 6 months, I have been buying 3 inland ports, a logistics hub in the Midwest, all clean, all legitimate, all public. When I am done, I will have cut him off from the water entirely. I will have a clean route from the ocean to the heartland. I am not building a higher wall. Maya, I am building a safe harbor." He was confessing his endgame, not a war for revenge, but a hostile takeover to legitimize his entire empire. As if summoned by the talk of war, a gust of wind, stronger than the rest, slammed into the penthouse. The massive, reinforced window behind Maya vibrated with a deep, groaning thud. Cassian was on his feet before the sound even registered in her brain, in one fluid motion. He was at the window, his hand on the frame, checking the seals. He looked down at the street, 40 stories below, searching for anything out of place. He pulled the heavy, floor-to-ceiling curtains closed, the thick fabric sliding shut, blocking out the storm and the city, encasing them in the warm, candlelit room. He turned from the window. She was standing right behind him. She had risen from the sofa, drawn by his sudden movement, and now there was no space between them at all. The air was electric. He could feel the warmth of her breath, see the pulse hammering in her throat. She was looking at him with a raw, unguarded need that mirrored his own. The smell of her skin, clean and sweet, filled his senses. "Maya," he breathed, a warning. She did not move. She lifted a hand, her fingers gently touching the bandage on his arm, the place where his blood had flowed to save her daughter. The dam of his control, strained for days, finally broke. He kissed her. It was not gentle. It was not hesitant. It was a collision, a claiming. His hand cupped the back of her head, his fingers tangling in her hair, holding her as if he was afraid she would vanish. His other arm wrapped around her waist, pulling her flush against him, lifting her slightly off her feet. She responded instantly, her fear and gratitude and confusion melting into a single, overwhelming surge of desire. Her hands clutched his shirt, then moved to his shoulders, holding on tightly as the kiss deepened. It was a desperate, hungry kiss, a release of every ounce of terror and tension they had shared. His lips were firm, demanding, and she met his force with her own. He broke the kiss, resting his forehead against hers, his breathing ragged. The room was silent save for their harsh breaths and the distant drumming of the rain. He kept his eyes closed, as if trying to memorize the feel of her. "This is—" he started, his voice rough. "I am still here," she whispered, her hands framing his face. "I'm not scared, I am awake." Her words, her choice, broke his last restraint. He looked at her, his eyes dark with an emotion so powerful it stole her breath. He lifted her into his arms, his movements fluid and certain. She weighed nothing to him. Maya wrapped her legs around his waist, her arms around his neck, as he carried her from the living room. He walked past the hallway where he had stood guard, past Juno's closed door, and into the master bedroom. He kicked the door shut with his foot. The sound of the latch clicking into place was definitive. Outside, in the living room, the two candles guttered in a draft, their small flames reflecting on the dark, rain-lashed glass. Morning came, bright and clean, the city washed new by the storm. The penthouse was quiet. Maya woke first, alone in the massive bed, tangled in cool, high thread count sheets. For a moment she was disoriented, the events of the night feeling like a fever dream, but the indent on the pillow next to her and the scent of him on her skin was real. She found him in the kitchen. He was already dressed in a fresh black shirt and trousers, his back to her, watching the coffee brew. He had not heard her approach. She leaned against the doorframe, wrapped in a silk robe she had found, just watching him. The morning light streamed in, illuminating the man who was a contradiction of scars and tenderness, violence and protection. He sensed her, turning. His gaze met hers, and the air was not awkward but filled with a quiet, settled intimacy. He did not smile, but his eyes softened. He poured a second mug of coffee, black, and handed it to her. Their fingers brushed as she took it. "Good morning," she murmured. "Morning," he replied. She walked to the window, which was fogged with condensation from the morning chill. She traced a small, lopsided smiley face on the glass. They did not speak of the future. They did not need to. They just existed in the calm, shared silence. The peace was broken by the buzz of his phone on the counter. A text. He picked it up, his thumb scrolling. Maya watched his shoulders tense, the easy peace of the morning evaporating like the mist on the glass. "Vera," she asked. He set the phone down, his face a mask once more. "The IFIO. Operation Clearwater is a public failure. They have no mole. They have no clear shot at Novak, and their case against me is circumstantial. They are desperate for a win." "What does that mean?" "It means," he said, turning to face her, his voice flat, "they are formally requesting you and Juno be placed in temporary, non-negotiable witness protection." The blood drained from her face. "Witness protection," she repeated, the words tasting like ash. "Which means separating us from you." She looked at him, her heart tearing. The choice was monstrous, her daughter's federally guaranteed safety, or this man who had just anchored her in the storm. Before she could even voice the conflict, he spoke, his voice rough, as if the words were being torn from him. "If it is the best thing for Juno, if it guarantees her safety, no questions asked." He looked away from her, at the city below. "I will not stop you." He was offering to let her go. He was putting her child's safety above his own desires, above the connection they had just forged. It was the most profound sacrifice he could make. Maya looked at him, the last of her doubts vanishing. He was not a captor. He was her protector. "Give me 24 hours, she said, her voice firm. "I need to think." He nodded, not looking at her, his jaw tight. Far below, in a nondescript delivery van parked 3 blocks away, a man with a square-faced steel watch adjusted the focus on a high-powered rifle scope. He was looking at thermal images, not visual ones. He was not aiming for the penthouse, but for the private garage entrance. A tiny, blue-green light on his scope flashed. He had a lock on the garage's electronic security panel. He was not there to shoot. He was there to open the door. The penthouse intercom, usually silent, crackled to life with Silas's strained voice. "Boss, we have a breach. Garage level. Bram Kincaid just used his active credentials. He's overriding the lockdown." Cassian did not pause. "Maya, get Juno. Now. We're leaving." He grabbed his jacket, his movements economical and swift. "Silas, seagulls on the principal. Full evacuation, Route B." They were in the private elevator, the metal box in a controlled fall, when it shuddered violently and slammed to a halt, trapping them in the dark. "He cut the power," Cassian said. His voice was not panicked. It was a blade. He jammed his fingers into the seam, forcing the doors open. They were on the garage level. It was a kill box. 2 black sedans were positioned to block the main exit ramp. The first shot was not a bang. It was a high-velocity crack that sounded like the air itself tearing apart. The ballistic glass of the elevator lobby, designed to stop a conventional bullet, turned into a white spiderweb. "Down," Cassian roared. He threw his 200 pounds of muscle directly into Maya, shoving her and Juno back into the relative safety of the steel elevator car. A second shot hit the same spot, and the glass pulverized, raining inward. Silas and 2 of Cassian's seagull detail returned fire, their weapons barking, laying down a suppressing volley toward the muzzle flashes in the shadows. "Go Metro access," Silas yelled, providing cover. One of the guards, a mountain of a man encased in body armor, grabbed Juno. "Mommy!" Juno screamed, her arms reaching out. "It is okay, baby," Maya cried, her heart fracturing. "We are right behind you." The guard disappeared with Juno down a concrete staircase marked sub-level access. Cassian grabbed Maya's hand. "This way." He pulled her through a different door, into the garage's security office. The monitors, on an independent circuit, were still live. "Silas," Cassian said into his comms, his eyes scanning the feeds. "They are covering the primary evac. Where is Kincaid?" Vera's voice, patched in from her own command center, answered. "Camera 3, Heliotrope Bridge. He's moving to intercept. He thinks you're in the primary sedan." "Good," Cassian said. "He's expecting me to run to ground. He's not expecting me to run at him." He looked at Silas, who had just joined them. "Split, you take Maya. Use the old Metro Line F infrastructure. It is off the city grid. Get them to the St. Alder safe house. I will draw the pursuit." "Boss, no," Silas protested. "The iron rule." "The iron rule is that they live," Cassian snapped. "I am the target. I draw the fire. Now move." He turned to Maya, his face hard. He gripped her chin, his thumb pressing against her lips, and kissed her. It was hard, fast, and desperate. A kiss that tasted of gunpowder and finality. "Go!" The Heliotrope Bridge was a high, lonely stretch of iron spanning the industrial canal. Cassian was at the wheel of his armored sedan, the speedometer needle touching 110 miles per hour. In his mirror, 2 black SUVs. Novak's men were in hot pursuit. He saw the roadblock just as he reached the apex of the bridge. It was not a police cruiser. It was a matte black, heavily customized SUV, one of the vehicles from his own Vale Harbor Works fleet. Cassian slammed on the brakes, the heavy car fishtailing, the tires screaming. He was trapped, the 2 chase cars closing in behind him. The door of the lead SUV opened. Bram Kincaid stepped out, the man from Juno's drawing, flanked by 2 of Novak's soldiers. His voice, amplified, boomed across the bridge. "This ends here, Cassian." Cassian kept his hands visibly on the steering wheel. "You always were an expensive employee, Bram," he projected, his voice laced with cold amusement. But sloppy, using your own credentials. A show of good faith for my new partner, Kincaid sneered. Novak is tired of your games. He's offering a trade. I am not interested, Cassian said, his eyes subtly scanning the iron supports of the bridge to his left. You will be, give us the mother, Maya Hart, hand her over, and Novak grants peace. He will even throw in the complete IFIO bribery file, the one that implicates Agent Miles. You walk away, your empire clean. Cassian let out a cold laugh. You think I would trade her? I think you are a businessman, Kincaid said. This is a good deal. Or, we take you, and we take her anyway. Your call. You have 30 seconds. Cassian was stalling, his fingers sliding to a hidden panel on his dashboard. And Novak just believes you. He trusts the man who betrayed me. Far below the city, in the damp, cold tunnels of the defunct metro line, Silas was leading Maya, one of the seagull guards who had met them at the junction, was acting as their guide. This way, ma'am, the guide said, shining his flashlight down a dark, intersecting tunnel. This map leads to the old flood basin. Silas stopped, grabbing the guide's arm. He shone his own high-powered beam onto the map. This map is wrong, Silas said, his voice dropping. The flood basin was sealed in 2020. That route is a dead end. It is a box canyon. The guide tensed. It is the updated route. No, Silas said, shoving Maya behind him. It is not. The guide's hand moved, but Maya saw it first. The flashlight beam had caught the man's wrist. He was wearing a heavy, square-faced steel watch. The watch, Maya screamed. Silas, it is him, the man from the park. Silas did not hesitate, tackling the guide. As they wrestled on the ground, high-powered beams flooded the end of the tunnel. A team of men in PSB tactical gear advanced, but their patches were wrong. They were fake. They were trapped. Maya, her EMT instincts kicking in, scanned her surroundings. She saw the emergency utility station on the wall. She grabbed the green, portable oxygen tank, ripped the mask off the hose, and cranked the valve to full. A high-pitched, deafening hiss filled the air. Cover your face, she yelled at Silas. She hurled the tank toward the fake PSB team. It slammed into the concrete. The jet of pure, pressurized oxygen hitting the damp, cold air. An instant, thick white fog of condensation exploded outward, blanketing the tunnel in zero visibility. Juno, Maya screamed, finding her daughter. Run! She grabbed Juno's hand and plunged toward a small, red sign she had spotted. Fire exit, stairwell C. On the bridge, Kincaid's patience was gone. Time is up, Cassian. You are right, Cassian said. He slammed his hand onto the hidden panel. It was not a weapon. It was the activation switch for the car's maritime distress system. 4 high-intensity flares, mounted on the car's undercarriage, exploded simultaneously. They erupted in a blinding 1 million candela blast of magnesium white light, turning the night into an agonizing nuclear day. Kincaid and his men screamed, dropping their weapons, their hands flying to their seared retinas. They fired blind. But Cassian was already gone. He had shoved his own door open, using the explosion as cover. He ran 3 steps and vaulted over the bridge's iron railing, disappearing into the blackness. Kincaid, vision blurred, stumbled to the railing. He saw only the dark, swirling water of the canal, 100 feet below. He looked at the empty sedan, now riddled with bullets. He pulled out his secure phone, dialing Novak. It is done, Kincaid growled. Vale is in the water. We have the car. Novak's voice was cold. In the water is not on my desk. I want confirmation. Get me his blood. I want to see it. From the shadows of the port, soaked and bruised, but very much alive, Cassian made his own call. He had landed on a shipping container. Vera, Kincaid is the leak. He just tried to kill me. Are you safe? For now, it is time. Pull Clearwater our way. Novak wants proof of my death. Kincaid has my car. Leak the file on Agent Miles, the one Bram offered me. Leak it now. That is scorched earth. Cassian, you will make an enemy of the entire IFIO. No, Cassian said, wincing as he straightened his ribs. We will give the honest ones a new target. That night, Maya and Juno huddled in the nave of the abandoned St. Alder Church. Silas had secured the perimeter, but he was gone. He trusted no one, not even his own men. Maya was rubbing Juno's arms, trying to keep her warm, when a shadow detached itself from the darkness near the altar. She gasped, pulling Juno behind her. The man stepped into a sliver of moonlight. He was bruised, his shirt was torn, and he was limping. Cassian. He stopped, just breathing her name, the sound lost in the vast empty church. Maya ran. She did not stop. She collided with him, wrapping her arms around his neck, burying her face in his shoulder. He hissed in pain as she hit his bruised body, but his arms came up, crushing her to him, holding her as if he would rather die than let go. She was sobbing, hitting his chest with a weak fist, then clinging to him again. "I thought you were dead," she whispered, her voice a raw mix of profound relief and furious anger. "I thought you were dead." "He thinks I am," Cassian murmured into her hair, his eyes closing, the wall he had built finally, completely, coming down. "He thinks he won." Vera Calder's gambit had detonated inside the IFIO, the leak of Agent Miles's bribery file, originating from an untraceable server, had crippled the agency. Operation Clearwater was a smoking ruin, and the press was calling for the director's resignation. The Interstate Financial Integrity Office was exposed, corrupted and desperate. They were in a high-floor suite at the Avalon Grand, a neutral territory Vera had secured. It was sterile, silent, and overlooked the very harbor they were fighting for. Vera, immaculate in a gray suit, was on a secure video conference with Director Thorne, the new, enraged head of the IFIO. "You have been played, Director," Vera said, her voice smooth as glass. "Novak compromised your top agent, but I am offering you a way out. I am offering you a win. My client, 90, is willing to provide the actual evidence against Ilya Novak, the location of the mole, Bram Kincaid, the shipping manifests, everything." "In exchange for what?" Thorne spat. "Full immunity for Vale." "In exchange for cooperation," Vera replied. "You will open a fully funded, high-priority witness protection corridor for Maya Hart and Juniper Hart. You will use our intelligence, and you will pivot your investigation onto Novak. Or, I will leak the files that show your predecessor actively suppressed this information 6 months ago." It was checkmate. The IFIO was forced to the table. Cassian clicked off the muted feed. He turned to Maya, who was sitting on the sofa, watching Juno sleep. "It is done. They are setting up transport, a military plane out of the naval base. You and Juno will be in Switzerland by tomorrow night." Maya did not look at him. She was watching the steady, rhythmic breathing of her daughter. "No." The word was quiet, but it landed in the room with the force of a gavel. "Maya, this is not a choice," Cassian said, his voice tight with frustration. "You are the primary target on a Blackwing contract." "I was a target in the Cobalt Garage," she replied, finally turning to face him. Her eyes were not filled with fear, but with a cold, clear fire he had not seen before. "I was a target in that tunnel. I am done being cargo. I am done running. I will not raise my daughter in a gilded cage in Zurich, waiting for the day Novak's reach finally finds us." She stood, walking toward him, closing the space. "We end this here, in New Avalon. We do not run from him. We finish him." He stared at her, caught off guard by the sheer, unyielding force of her will. She was no longer a civilian caught in the crossfire. She was a combatant. Their new strategy was complicated by a simple, human frailness. Juno was sick, the night in the cold, damp tunnels, the stress, the secondary shock it had all taken a toll. She had a persistent, low-grade fever that would not break. "Doctor." Eris made a secure house call to the hotel, his face grave. "Her immune system is compromised," he explained, looking at Maya. This specific rare antibody profile, it is highly volatile. We are operating blind. We do not know how it is reacting to the stress, or why. I am strongly recommending a full genetic sequencing. We need to map her markers, not just her blood type. It is the only way to anticipate how she might react to future medications or trauma. It is medically necessary. The request was sound. Maya looked at the complex, multi-page genetic consent forms on the datapad, her hand hovering, hesitating. Cassian took the datapad from her. He did not ask. He did not pressure. He simply signed the line for medical sponsor and financial guardian, the one he had established at the hospital, taking the full legal and financial burden onto his shoulders. He handed the datapad and stylus back to her. Whatever it takes, Maya, for her future. She looked at his signature, solid and clear, then added her own. The blood sample was drawn, labeled Jane Doe, and rushed to the Vail Memorial Genetics Lab under a high-priority, anonymous protocol. The preliminary results came back in less than 12 hours. Vera received the encrypted file first. She was in the sweet study, and Cassian saw her go perfectly still. She disconnected her main line and made a private, internal call to Cassian's secure phone. He picked it up in the living room. Cassian. Vera's voice was stripped of all its legal precision. It was quiet, almost unsteady. The lab flagged the sample. They ran the paternal marker comparison against your file in the Vail medical database as a routine compatibility check. Cassian waited, the silence stretching. It is not compatibility, Cassian, Vera said, her voice barely a whisper. It is a 100% definitive match. The markers are identical. There is no ambiguity. Juniper Hart is your daughter. Cassian hung up the phone. He did not move. He stood, gripping the back of a chair, the blood draining from his face as a cold, electric shock rolled through him. How? The world tilted. A memory, fragmented and hazy, surfaced like a drowning man grasping for air. 8 years ago, a hot summer night, the air thick with salt and music. It was not the dawn, not yet. Just the restless heir to the Vail Empire, the tidal lantern, a loud, cheerful dockside bar in Breakwater, draped in cheap string lights. He was drinking, trying to escape his father's shadow. A laugh. A woman at the bar, dark hair, bright eyes, arguing with the bartender over a song. He had bought her a drink. They had talked. He could not remember her face, only the sound of her laugh and the brief, shared anonymity of the night. Was it Maya? He walked out of the study, his legs unsteady. Maya was standing in the living room, watching him. She had not heard the call, but she saw the profound, tectonic shock on his face. She knew, with a mother's intuition, what the call had been. The results are in, she stated. He could not form a lie. He could only give a single, devastated nod. Her own breath hitched, the confirmation hitting her. She processed it, not as a betrayal, but as a clarification. The blood match, the eyes, the protective instinct, it all snapped into a terrible, logical focus. She looked at this man, the killer, the protector, the man she had held in the church, the man who had shared her bed. If it is true, she whispered, her voice raw, if she is yours, what do you choose? Cassian us or the Empire? He looked at her, his eyes a war zone of conflict. He finally answered, the words torn from him. I will clean the Empire, to keep the shore safe. It was not a promise of a new life. It was a vow of a safer one. The final meeting was a war council. Director Thorne and 2 vetted IFIO agents sat on one side of the table. Vera, Cassian, and Maya sat on the other. Our offer stands, Thorne said, her voice clipped. We take Miss Hart and the child into federal protective custody. Now, away from you, Mr. Vail. You are a compromised party. No, Maya said, her voice ringing out. Everyone turned to her. I will cooperate, Maya said, looking directly at Thorne. I will testify about the tunnel, about Kincaid, about the threat, but on one condition. You take Novak down by the book. No more Operation Clearwaters. You use the law. I want my daughter to see that the law works. I will not have her father's empire, or her mother's testimony, be built on a sea of blood." Cassian looked at her, a profound, aching respect in his eyes. He slowly nodded. "I will hand over my entire Novak file. Shipping routes, offshore accounts, I will give you Kincaid." He turned to Thorne. "I will deliver Novak to you, legally, but we do it clean." Vera, sensing the new alliance, stepped in to close the deal. "Novak is arrogant. He thinks Cassian is dead. He's moving to absorb Vale's assets. He's particularly interested in the Harbor Hearts Fund he created." She brought up a schematic on the room's main screen. "We're going to use it. We are going to leak a manifest, making Novak believe a shipment of high-value, unsecured medical supplies, plasma, rare pharmaceuticals is sitting in a Vale warehouse. He will not be able to resist claiming it himself." Thorne frowned. "You want to trap him for financial fraud?" "No," Vera said, a cold, thin smile touching her lips. "He thinks he is signing for plasma, but the manifest we give you will show he is knowingly taking possession of controlled biological agents, mislabeled. We are not just catching him for fraud, Director. We are catching him on charges of financial terrorism." Pier 27 was a tomb, a cavernous cold storage warehouse at the dead end of the industrial harbor. Smelling of brine and freon, the air inside hummed, kept at a steady 35 degrees. Maya sat in the back of a black IFIO surveillance van, parked in the shadow of a massive crane. Juno was beside her, bundled in a parka, coloring in a book by the dim glow of the van's interior light. Maya's gaze was fixed on the small, high-definition monitor in front of her. She was watching a ghost. Cassian Vale, who the world believed was at the bottom of the heliotrope canal, stood inside the warehouse, wired for sound, a small, nearly invisible earpiece his only connection to them. He was not dressed as a Don. He was dressed as a dock manager, in a heavy work coat and boots. Silas was nearby, similarly disguised, blending with the IFIO agents who were hidden in the rafters and behind stacks of frozen cargo. "Target is mobile," an IFIO agent whispered in Maya's ear, the comms feed patched into the van. A set of headlights cut the gloom. A black sedan, followed by two SUVs, rolled to a stop. Ilya Novak stepped out, flanked by his men, and at his side, looking nervous but arrogant, was Bram Kincaid. "A cold night for a dead man's business," Novak said, his voice echoing slightly in the vast space. "He left a lot of inventory," Bram replied, gesturing to the refrigerated container at the center of the warehouse. "The medical supplies, just like the manifest said." As Novak and Bram moved toward the container, Silas Rook slipped away from the main IFIO team. He moved silently along the exterior of the warehouse, where another vehicle was parked, an unmarked car belonging to the PSB's Special Prosecutor's Office, a unit insulated from the IFIO's corruption. Silas handed an encrypted drive to the prosecutor. "This is the complete file on Kincaid, ballistics, witness payoffs, security footage, all for the hits he pulled before he ever met Novak. It has nothing to do with Mr. Vale. It is a clean case." "Thank you, Mr. Rook," the prosecutor said, taking the drive. "We will take it from here." Back inside, Novak approached the container. He produced a data pad. "I am signing for the transfer. As of now, this is my property." The moment he pressed his thumb to the screen, the world lit up. "IFIO, you are under arrest." Blinding white floodlights snapped on from the rafters. The IFIO tactical team emerged from all sides. Novak did not surrender. He snarled, pulling a weapon from his coat. "You!" he screamed. Not at the agents, but at the shadows. "This was you." Kincaid reacted, firing wildly at the agents, who returned fire. The warehouse erupted in a deafening, chaotic exchange of concussive bangs. "In the van!" Maya screamed, pulling Juno to the floor, shielding her. Novak, using the chaos, rolled behind a stack of pallets. He raised his weapon, scanning for the true threat. He found him. Cassian stepped out from behind a steel support column, his hands empty. The ghost, Novak spat, leveling his weapon. Novak fired. Cassian did not move back. He moved forward, diving inside the weapon's range. He slammed his forearm into Novak's wrist, the crack of bone sharp even over the gunfire. The gun skittered away. Cassian drove his shoulder into Novak's chest, slamming him against the steel wall. He grabbed Novak's other arm, twisted it behind his back in a brutal lock, and forced him to his knees. Cassian did not pull his own weapon. He did not choke the life from the man who had tried to kill him, the man who had terrorized his family. He simply held him, his body a cage of iron, his breathing harsh. "Secure," Cassian roared. In the van, Maya watched the monitor, her hand over her mouth. She had seen him kill. She had seen the coldness in his eyes. Now, she saw something infinitely more terrifying: his control. He had the power to end Novak's life, and he had chosen not to. He was holding to his promise. He was keeping his hands clean for them. The line between the monster and the man did not just blur. It vanished. The fight was over, but the danger was not. Bram Kincaid, seeing Novak captured and Silas's other team, the PSB, moving toward him, knew he was finished. He was trapped. He bolted. He ran, not for the exit, but for the one piece of leverage he had left. He ran for the IFIO van. He ripped the side door open, his wild eyes landing on Maya. "Get up!" he screamed, grabbing her. "No," Maya fought, but he shoved her aside. His target, the small, parka-clad figure. He grabbed Juno, pulling her from the van, holding her in front of him as a shield, his backup pistol pressed to her head. "Nobody moves." Maya's scream was primal. She launched herself at Kincaid, a mother lion clawing at his face, his arm, anything. "No, take me, take me." A single, sharp crack split the air. Kincaid screamed, a high-pitched sound of pure agony. His hand flew open, his gun clattering to the concrete. He stared, dumbfounded, at his own wrist, where a neat, dark hole had appeared. Silas Rook stood 20 yards away, his weapon held steady, smoke rising from the barrel. "Move!" a voice yelled. Suddenly, a deafening hiss filled the air. High-pressure fog Vera's contingency plan began pouring from the ceiling, the fire suppression system kicking in, triggered remotely. Alarms blared, and the white floodlights died, replaced by the pulsing, flashing red of the emergency strobes. Chaos. Cassian, who had sprinted from the warehouse at the sound of Maya's scream, plunged into the fog. "Maya!" He found her, pulling Juno from Kincaid, who was now surrounded by PSB agents. Cassian scooped Juno up, his arm clamping her to his chest as she sobbed into his neck. He grabbed Maya's free hand, his grip like a steel trap. "This way." He ran, pulling them through the swirling red smoke, past the flashing lights, a man of shadows emerging into the light, defined not by the empire he ran, but by the child in his arms and the woman at his side. They burst out into the cold night air, met by a sea of blue and red lights. Ilya Novak was led out in handcuffs, his face a mask of fury. He saw Cassian, standing with Maya and Juno. "You are weak," Novak snarled, his voice thick with hate. "A woman, a child. They took your crown, veil. They made you weak." Cassian adjusted Juno in his arms, settling her against his heart. He looked at the captured Dawn, his gaze cold and clear. "No," Cassian said. "They made me stronger." A special prosecutor stepped up to the gathering news cameras. "We can confirm Ilya Novak is in custody. Furthermore, a separate PSB investigation has led to the arrest of former investigator Bram Kincaid for multiple, unrelated charges of conspiracy and murder." The two-front war was over. Cassian turned to Maya, the adrenaline finally draining from him, leaving only a profound, aching need. He had to tell her. About the genetic test, about the bar 8 years ago, about everything. "Maya," he started, his voice rough. His phone rang, the sharp sound cutting through the night. He looked at the screen. Vale Memorial. He answered, his whole body going still. "Yes, I see." He hung up. He looked at Maya, his face pale, all the victory of the night draining away. replaced by a quiet, agonizing dread. "That was the lab," he said, his voice barely audible. "The final, verified genetic report. It is ready." The ride to the hospital was silent. The city lights streaked past the armored glass, but the three of them were trapped in a bubble of suffocating quiet. The battle was over, but the truth was just about to hit. The genetic counseling office at Vale Memorial was silent, sterile, and lit by white fluorescent panels that left no room for shadows. "Doctor." Eris sat across from them, a thick, bound file on the desk. Juno was in the corner, coloring, headphones playing cartoon music. "We ran the full sequence." "Doctor," Eris said, his voice carefully neutral. He slid the file across the desk to Cassian. "The preliminary markers were correct. The final, verified report is conclusive." Maya held her breath. "Mr. Vale," the doctor continued, "the paternal loci are a perfect match. There is no ambiguity. The probability of paternity is 99.999%. You are Juniper Hart's biological father." Maya let out the breath she was holding, a small, shuddering sound. It was not shock, but the heavy, final thud of the truth locking into place. Cassian did not look at the file. He did not look at Maya. He stood up, walked over to the corner, and slowly knelt, bringing himself down to Juno's eye level. She pulled the headphones off, looking up at him curiously. He struggled for the words, his voice, which had commanded an empire, now rough and uncertain. "Juno," he said, his throat tight. I love. Would it be okay with you if you called me Dad Cass?" Juno's eyes widened. She looked past him to her mother. Maya was crying silently, but she gave a single, strong nod. Juno turned back to Cassian. A slow, bright smile spread across her face. "Dad Cass," she said, trying the name. She launched herself forward, wrapping her small arms tightly around his neck. Cassian's eyes clamped shut. He buried his face in her hair, his own powerful arms encircling her, holding her as if she were the only anchor in the world. Later, in the sterile silence of the hospital suite, Maya finally asked the question. "How?" she whispered, her hands shaking. We met at the pier. We never—" "The tidal lantern," Cassian said, the memory surfacing, hazy and dark. 8 years ago, a bar in Breakwater. We talked, but only talked." "No," Maya said, her face pale as she pieced it together. "That wasn't... I was there. I remember the bar, but... Oh, God." Her hand flew to her mouth, her eyes wide with a dawning, sickening realization. "What is it, Maya?" "I was an apprentice nurse at the 7th Street Clinic," she said, her voice thin. "The Harbor Hearts Clinic. After a bad relationship, I was told I might not be able to conceive naturally. I used their anonymous donor program. For IVF. Cassian's blood ran cold. Novak. He controlled that clinic," Cassian said, the horrifying logic building. "He must have had access to my private medical files, samples stored years ago. He ran Harbor Hearts not just to launder money, but to track data, to find vulnerabilities." He looked at her, his face a mask of rage and regret. "He didn't just find a weakness, Maya. He created one. He swapped the anonymous donor file with mine. He put his asset, my bloodline, into your pregnancy. He's been watching you ever since." Maya recoiled, the violation of it stealing her breath. He used me. He used my body to create leverage." "He used us both," Cassian said, his voice raw. He crossed the room in 2 strides, his hands gripping her shoulders, forcing her to look at him. "The pain he caused you, the manipulation... Maya, It was not your fault," she interrupted, her voice fierce, tears streaming down her face. She touched his cheek. "It was his. He is the monster who did this, not you." "I take responsibility," Cassian vowed, his voice like iron. "For all of it. For her. He wanted to use my blood to control me. He failed. Now I will use it to build her future." He looked at Juno, sleeping peacefully. I'm cutting the cancer out. For good. The deal with the IFIO was finalized by Vera, Cassian Vale, in a move that shocked the financial world, stepped down from all direct operations of Vale Harbor Works. He announced the immediate sale of his casino and gaming licenses. He retained the shipping ports, restructuring them under a new, federally monitored, transparent charter, and he endowed the Juno Fund at Vale Memorial, a $500 million commitment to pediatric rare blood type research. He did not propose in a penthouse. He took her to Breakwater at sunset, to the end of the splintered wooden pier where he had grown up, the place that smelled of salt, diesel, and old promises. The city's skyline glittered across the bay, a world away. He did not kneel. He stood beside her, watching an old tugboat guide a container ship into the harbor. "I cannot give you a normal life, Maya," he said, his voice quiet, competing with the seagulls. "I do not even know what that looks like, but I can give you an honest one, a safe one." He took a small, simple box from his pocket. Inside, there was no massive diamond, only a single, brushed platinum band. "I promise you this, our home. It will never have guards at the door. It will just have us." He turned to her, his heart in his eyes. "Maya Hart, will you marry me?" She was already crying, but she was smiling. "Yes," she whispered. "Yes, Cassian." Dawn. They were on the deck of a small boat, gliding silently over the calm water of the bay. The city was just waking up. He stood behind her, his arms wrapped around her waist, pulling her back against the solid warmth of his chest. She leaned her head back, resting it on his shoulder. "It is quiet," she whispered. "It is," he replied. He turned her in his embrace. His gaze was soft. The ice of the dawn melted away, leaving only the man. He lowered his head and kissed her. It was slow and deep, a kiss that spoke of Sunday mornings and shared coffee, a promise of a future, not a desperate clutch in a storm. His hand tangled gently in her hair. Her hand came up to rest over his heart. He pulled back, resting his forehead against hers. Their hands found each other, fingers lacing together, the warmth of their palms a silent vow. The only sounds were the gentle lap of the water against the hull and the steady, shared rhythm of their breathing. Months later, Ilya Novak was convicted on 10 counts of financial terrorism and conspiracy, sentenced to life in a federal supermax prison. Bram Kincaid pleaded guilty to his own string of unrelated murder charges, buried by Silas's clean evidence. The PSB was quietly and thoroughly reformed from the inside out by Vera Calder. On a bright Tuesday morning, Cassian Vale, dressed in jeans and a dark sweater, walked a 7-year-old girl with a missing front tooth to the gates of her elementary school. He knelt. "Have a good day, Captain." He kissed her forehead. Maya Hart, wearing a white coat, unlocked the glass doors of the new Breakwater Community Clinic, built on the ashes of the old 7th Street office. The penthouse was sold. Their home was a small, beautiful house on the cliffs overlooking the bay, with wide windows and no gates. That night, they were at the dinner table. Juno ran in, holding a small, blue-ribbon trophy. I won the science fair. My volcano was the best." Cassian laughed, pulling her into a one-armed hug. "What did I tell you, Captain Juniper? Future chief operator of the entire Vale Harbor." Later, after Juno was asleep, Maya stood on the deck, looking out at the water. The harbor lights twinkled like constellations. Cassian came up behind her, sliding his arms around her waist, pulling her close. She leaned back against him, his chin resting on her hair. She felt his steady heartbeat against her back. "We did not choose this beginning," she whispered, watching the lights dance on the water. He kissed the side of her neck, his arms tightening around her. "But we will choose every day after." They stood together in the quiet of the night, a family forged by violence. Now standing in the peaceful harbor they had finally reclaimed. Thank you for listening to this story. We would love to know where you are listening from. Please comment below so we can connect and share our thoughts. Remember to subscribe to our channel. Mafia boss story, like this video, and support us by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.